Here's Brody Brazil.
I am definitely not here to hide the fact that for the last handful of years, I've had the educated insight and perspective and opinion that Nashville, Tennessee would soon become an expansion market for Major League Baseball. And you know that Major League Baseball has to do this in pairs, so what other city combined with Nashville? But again, that Nashville would be one of the two for expansion as soon as everything else was sorted out. And the A's and Rays were the obvious issues that baseball had to fix and figure out and get past, however they were resolved, to get to something like Nashville. But again, everybody assumed that Nashville was a home run, even a grand slam. As recent as last year at this time during winter meetings in Nashville, Tennessee, at the Opryland. And everybody there, of course, was talking about current baseball affairs and events, but they were also hinting towards the future and that Nashville would most likely be part of the circuit eventually when baseball was ready to expand. But all of a sudden now, here we are a calendar year later, and the mayor of Nashville is basically saying that his city doesn't have the ingredients to bring in Major League Baseball how the league and how the game would want to do it. Let me first give you some things to know of why the mayor is saying this. April of 2023, Nashville approved that domed stadium. For the Titans, it's already under construction, and the total cost of this project, $2.2 billion. So that's a large amount, but here's the even crazier part. $1.2 billion is being funded publicly. That's one of the largest public subsidies for a professional sports venue that's ever been awarded, you could say, to a team for construction. So they've committed a lot already. Maybe they've now bit off more than they can actually chew for anything else. And again, baseball's winter meetings last year, 2023 of December, they were held at the Gaylord Opryland. Everybody was there to celebrate Nashville, to kind of say wink, wink, nod, nod. This is probably going to be where a team eventually lands, because that was all the talk. There was really no doubt about that. There were multiple groups trying to push forward. And yeah, at the time, it felt like, and everybody was saying this, Nashville is a lock. And look, for a lot of reasons, I still think it has a lot of upside. It's got the right geography, it's got the right demographics, it's got a lot of good things going for it. But Mayor Freddie O'Connell, he took office in September of 2023. This was after the stadium for the Titans had been approved, $1.2 billion. And now, during his term, he's kind of speaking out on a number of different topics, but basically to say Nashville is not ready for Major League Baseball. He went on the George Plaster Show, the radio program that's been going on for a long time. George is a radio voice in Nashville that's been around for multiple decades. And one of the first topics that came up was not necessarily expansion, but relocation, right? The Chicago White Sox are trying to build a new stadium on the South Loop. It's a neighborhood called the 78. It would be a riverfront ballpark for the White Sox. Fantastic. All the bells and whistles. You could take a water taxi to the game. Problem is, the White Sox are probably going to ask either Chicago or the county or the state of Illinois for about $1 billion or more of public money to make this stadium happen. So Mayor Freddie O'Connell was first asked about any discussions he's had with the White Sox, because the White Sox at one point had kind of hinted at maybe relocation to Nashville as an option if Chicago didn't work out.
I thought it was an underreported story that you met with Chicago White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf. For me, I've known him as one of the most powerful owners in that sport. What was that meeting like?
Well, it was really interesting because it wasn't, I don't think we came to the table with any specific agenda. He didn't really come to the table with a specific agenda. And George, to your point, maybe what I noticed was that a lot of Chicago area media were very, very keenly interested in that. We got a couple of inquiries from Chicago, and then I saw it reported for weeks in Chicago area press. But I think to your point, locally, it may not have been as much of a story. It was very interesting because just a few weeks after that, it seemed like Jerry was back in Chicago, continuing to negotiate on the ground there. I think it was, probably a little bit of him just kind of gently kicking the tires on sort of what are sports market appetite was for MLB, and just, to kind of come to something that you brought up before we even started recording, the understanding where the Titan Stadium project was, and financing terms and all those kinds of things. So I would characterize it this way. It was mostly a get to know you conversation, and honestly not a lot more than that.
Okay, so that's a summary of what the White Sox ownership and Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell discussed, maybe just kind of the lay of the land, what exactly is going on here. But there were discussions, right? He's not denying contact. There was contact. There was a back and forth, and who knows how deep it really went. But the White Sox have obviously reached out about Nashville. That's one situation. Now, how about the Tampa Bay Rays and everything that they've been going through? Hurricane Milton, it ripped the roof off of Tropicana Field, and the Rays are going to play next year for sure, temporarily, at Steinbrenner Field in Tampa. It's a minor league ballpark. It's the spring training home of the Yankees. But now there's all this conversation of, well, what if the Trop never gets fixed? And what if a new stadium never gets under construction? They're voting on approvals pretty soon with this for the county, Pinellas County. But the Rays aren't all fully in on this, because they said if it's a 2029 timeline, they may not be able to be part and finance the ballpark like they said they would. Bottom line is, what about even the Tampa Bay Rays as potential relocation to Nashville? And I'm not hinting at this. I'm not hoping for this. We just want to talk about this as an option. Obviously, Mayor O'Connell was asked about it. But it also does largely make sense from a geography standpoint, in that Tampa's in the AL East. You wouldn't have to do any realignment to keep the Rays, if they really did move to Nashville, in the AL East. But here's what Mayor O'Connell said about discussions with the Tampa Bay Rays.
The situation in Tampa appears to have fallen apart. There's a lot of volatility.
Literally
there
fallen apart.
There seems to be a lot of mistrust between the county commission and the Tampa Bay Rays.
It's true.
And so I'm just going to ask it. Has anybody from Tampa, the Rays, MLB contacted you? Because it's an easy rumor to say if they leave,
right,
Nashville's number one on that list.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. No one has reached out to me personally, and I am unaware that anybody has reached out to anybody on our team. We, in a lot of these conversations, one or sometimes both of Bob Mendez, our chief development officer, who's kind of managing the East Bank portfolio, and has sort of our entire public side land development initiative in his, that's kind of his portfolio overall. And then Jamari Brown, who's our director of economic and community development, who stays in close contact with things. I mean, they've been kind of capturing all the knowledge of sports. Now, I'll say it this way. Maybe somebody sent an email to one of those guys that I just haven't heard about yet. But no, I mean, for my part, we have not had any meaningful contact with anybody from representing the Tampa Bay Rays.
I'm not going to accuse the mayor of anything. I think he was speaking honestly there, but treading carefully. I do think we can acknowledge that, right? He says that he's had nothing to do with it, but he doesn't know about everybody else. He thinks there's been no contact, but he can't say that for certain. It sure would have been a lot easier if he said no. Nobody's talked to us, no communication, nobody's reached out. I know that for sure. He doesn't know that for sure. And I wouldn't put it past the Rays to, again, at least make contact. They have to explore, I think, their options if it's not going to work out in fixing up Tropicana Field, if there are options in St. Pete, the one that they kind of agreed to initially but now want to back out of, or anything in Tampa that would potentially come up. If all these things are not secure, if none of them are secure, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying that any of this is the right way to go about treating your fan base, but in terms of exploring their options, I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, they did reach out to somebody. Okay, but all of this brings us back to a central point. We've mostly talked about relocating teams to Nashville. How about Nashville as an expansion city? And the mayor is basically saying it's not like it used to be anymore because of the commitments that the city has already made to the Tennessee Titans to build their new stadium. They're not built for anything else to build anything else right now.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think I remember when you were running, it was something to the effect of, look, if this baseball thing's ever going to happen, people need to understand that after we finish with the Titans and the Dome Stadium, we're kind of tapped out of the sports money market. We don't print it on a printing press. Is that kind of still where we are as we look to the future of wherever this MLB thing goes?
Tapped out.
Right. I think I'll say as Bob Mendez, our chief development officer, has worked on the stadium footprint of public land around the new Titan Stadium that is under construction, as we look down our list of the portfolio of land that he is managing with his team, and as we evaluate the overall infrastructure costs of the city as we continue to grow, it is very, very difficult to imagine that there is a near-term future where we would be considering any kind of public financing for a public entertainment facility whose primary usage would be sports. And so I kind of think of it in those two ways, especially for Major League Baseball, because that's going to be, of the conversations we've had of MLB, of women's basketball and WNBA, of women's soccer and the NWSL, MLB would have the highest overall cost and probably largest overall land needs. And so take that and couple it with the need for a credible ownership group. And, right now today, I would not say that the ingredients are there for that.
I mean, that's the takeaway right there. The ingredients are not there for that. Everything they need to make Major League Baseball come together as an expansion city. I guess relocation might be a little bit different. It's a kind of a different discussion, but expansion, the ingredients, he says, are not there for that right now. Now, this is the mayor's opinion. This is not anybody on a city council or any other type of politician or business leader, but the mayor obviously has some pull. And the mayor is saying these things at a very specific time. We'll get to that in just a second. So one last thing here. George Plaster, the host, asked Mayor O'Connell, so if like Major League Baseball was going to come to Nashville, in any optimal sense, how would this have to go? How would this look so that Nashville could ever even make it work?
What would the city be willing to do to help if MLB is as interested as I think they are?
I think they are.
Knowing as a Davidson County taxpayer what stuff you face.
Yeah, I think the first thing we're willing to do is have a conversation with the first credible ownership group that materializes. I mean, the best case scenario is somebody comes along and says, hey, we've got a proposition where we are willing to buy land and fully privately finance a stadium. I mean, that's a when can we start kind of conversations. So
Merry
I think that's
and
where
Happy New Year.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
and I will say there have been, we have observed other cities that have had close to that kind of good fortune. I think we would evaluate things in terms of the priority of other things that are in the queue. Right now, we know we already have a legal and financial obligation to support the effort to get the Titan Stadium underway. We know we have, terms in place already for the other three sports facilities that we've got, and so we would kind of have to evaluate sequence, scale, and request for where we started in. But I mean, I think we're kind of like the three leagues where we stand by ready to talk to any ownership group that materializes that could complete a franchise scenario.
So to be clear, they're not out of this completely, but they're not going to carry the heavy load in terms of financing things or paying for it or giving away land. I think what the mayor is stating there is they're not closing the door on this by any means. They're just changing the perspective and the narrative of how it might look. So here are my quick takeaways. Number one, Nashville is now saying, at least their mayor is saying, that they're not ready for Major League Baseball expansion. But you know what? Neither is Major League Baseball anymore. With the A's and Rays in these temporary locations and the Rays really not having any clarity, and the A's having some things squared away, but not everything, like not some of the main things squared away for the ultimate move to Las Vegas, Major League Baseball at one point was a lock to expand by 2029. If I'm being honest, it feels more like 2030 or 2031 or 2032 until they would actually even get around to doing this. So again, Nashville kind of saying, at this moment, we're not in for anything, but I don't think Major League Baseball is necessarily pushing the envelope right now on getting anything done with expansion or talking about it or even floating that out there in the news cycle. Yeah, $1.2 billion of public money, that is a large commitment to one project, the Dome Stadium for the Tennessee Titans. And it makes me think and wonder in reverse, like if a public entity, whether it's a city, a county, or a state, whether they are going to give money or not, that's not for me to decide for them. Obviously, that's kind of a trend that, the public does not want their money to go to sports stadiums anymore. But if they were going to do that, couldn't they have spread it out a little bit? I mean, $1.2 billion to one thing, to one entity. Yeah, that would put you in a tapped out type situation. In reverse, again, if you're going to spend that much, I'm not here to tell you what to do or not, but if you're going to spend that much, it probably would have been a little bit more prudent to spread it out. And as I mentioned before, public subsidies becoming a lot less frequent across the United States. Here's a market like Nashville where you might suspect, based on politics, that they want to pump money into things. They want to do sports projects and ventures, and they're okay with this, but here's their mayor saying we have $0 for anything like that right now. I also think the timing of this interview for the mayor to go on a local radio program, talk at length about some of these topics, to go right at them, to say what he said about the ingredients not being there for Major League Baseball right now. He did this on December 5th. Winter meetings started just a handful of days later. This was on purpose. The timing of this was on purpose so that when reporters went back to the executives of Major League Baseball during this year's winter meetings, which, by the way, are over in Dallas, Texas, that this would be a talking point. The mayor kind of did this, you'd have to think, to spark some other conversations, some other interviews, and some other coverage of this that previously wasn't existing. And it gets obvious, right? Nashville is just looking for private funding. It's not only a message to Major League Baseball, but it's also a message to anybody else out there who has an idea for Nashville. You better bring your checkbook with you, because Nashville's not looking to publicly fund things like they had been doing. So anyway, no longer ready. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but no longer in the current way they were going to do it. They're not ready to publicly subsidize a baseball stadium in Nashville like maybe they were, even as recently as a year ago. Because again, all this was a conversation. None of it was really, taken down, or none of it was gone against. It was all kind of like a turnkey thing that this was going to eventually happen. Now, quite honestly, at this point, doesn't seem like it's on the front burner by any means. That's the end of this video. I appreciate you making it here. Thumbs up down below. That would greatly help me, this video, and this channel. And before it ends, before it's over, real quick, do me one more favor. Go down there and make sure that you've already hit that subscribe button. That way I can definitely see you back here next time.